You're working harder than ever. Nobody notices. Meanwhile, someone quieter just got promoted. Again, what if visibility is actually sabotaging your success? The loudest person in the room rarely holds the power. Ghosts don't announce themselves. They simply appear with results. This audiobook reveals what they know. Silence is strategy. By the end, you'll vanish from the noise and dominate the scoreboard. Welcome to Work Like a Ghost. No noise, just results. I'm here to tell you something that will likely challenge everything you've been told about success in the modern workplace. You've been taught to be visible, to network constantly, to document your journey, to share your process. You've been told that if people don't see you working, the work doesn't count. That's a lie. And it's costing you everything. Right now, as you listen to this, there are people in your industry producing remarkable results while you're stuck in meetings explaining what you plan to do. There are professionals who've mastered skills. You're still researching because they stopped documenting the learning process and just learned. There are entrepreneurs building empires while their competitors are building audiences. The difference isn't talent. It isn't luck. It's understanding a fundamental truth about how real work gets done. Noise and results are inversely correlated. The more you broadcast, the less you build. The more you announce, the less you accomplish. This is the visibility paradox, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Think about the last time you saw someone constantly posting about their startup journey, their fitness transformation, their creative process. Now think about whether they actually finished what they started. Most didn't. They got so addicted to the validation of documenting the journey that they never completed the destination. They confused activity with achievement. They traded the hard work of execution for the easy dopamine of attention. Meanwhile, someone else stayed quiet, put their head down, and actually shipped the thing. When they emerged with results, everyone wondered where they came from. They didn't come from anywhere. They were always there. They just weren't making noise while they worked. This audiobook is built on a simple three-phase framework. Disappear, execute, emerge. First, you'll learn to vanish from the noise, to reclaim your time and attention from the performance economy that's draining your capacity for real work. Second, you'll discover how to execute at a level you didn't know you were capable of, because you'll finally have the mental bandwidth and protected time to do deep work. Third, you'll understand how to emerge strategically with undeniable results that speak louder than any amount of self-promotion ever could. This isn't about becoming a recluse. It's about becoming dangerous. It's about developing the discipline to work in silence while others are performing their productivity. It's about building a reputation anchored in what you've delivered, not what you've declared. Let me be clear about what this transformation requires. It requires you to give up the comfort of constant validation. It requires you to trust that your work matters even when no one is watching. It requires you to delay gratification, to resist the urge to announce your intentions, to sit with the discomfort of invisibility while you build something that will eventually be impossible to ignore. Most people can't do this. They need the audience. They need the comments, the likes, the encouragement. They're addicted to the performance. But you're not most people. You picked up this audiobook because somewhere deep down, you know that all that noise is holding you back. You're ready to go ghost. The attention economy is a zero-sum game, and right now, you're losing. Every minute you spend broadcasting your work is a minute you're not doing your work. Every status update is a withdrawal from your creative bank account. Every time you stop to explain what you're building, you lose momentum on actually building it. The math is brutal and unavoidable. There are only so many hours in a day. Every hour spent performing is an hour not spent producing. And here's what nobody tells you. The people watching your performance aren't rooting for you. They're just entertained. They'll watch you announce your goals, and they'll forget about you by the next scroll. But if you emerge 6 months from now with something remarkable, something finished, something undeniable, you'll have their attention in a way that matters. You'll have their respect. I want you to think about someone in your field who seems to consistently deliver exceptional results. Not the person with the biggest following, not the person who's always in the comments, the person who just keeps shipping quality work. How often do you hear from them? Probably not much. They're not posting daily updates. They're not sharing their morning routine. They're not asking for feedback on work in progress. They just appear periodically with something excellent, collect their wins, and disappear back into the work. That's not an accident. That's a strategy. They've figured out what you're about to learn. The less you say, the more you can do. The less visible you are, the more velocity you have. The quieter you work, the louder your results speak. Let me share a scenario that might sound familiar. Picture two product designers, both talented, both hired at the same company on the same day. Designer A is active on all the internal channels. She shares mood boards. She posts work-in-progress screenshots. She's in every meeting, always ready to give her input on projects she's not even assigned to. She writes long messages about her design philosophy. Everyone knows her name. Designer B is quiet. He responds when directly asked, but he doesn't volunteer much. He declines meetings that aren't essential. He doesn't share his process. Most people in the company couldn't pick him out of a lineup. 6 months pass. Designer A has a lot of half-finished projects. She started strong on each one, got great feedback on her early concepts, but somehow never quite shipped anything polished. She got pulled into too many conversations. She spent too much time explaining her choices. She got addicted to the validation of showing early work. Her manager starts to worry. Lots of activity, not much output. Designer B ships 3 major features. Each one is polished, tested, and makes a measurable impact on user metrics. He didn't show anyone the messy middle. He didn't ask for encouragement. He just did the work. When he presents the finished features, the room goes quiet. This is what we hired him for, someone says. Within a year, Designer B is leading projects. Designer A is still explaining why her projects aren't finished yet. Same talent, different approach. One ghost one. This is playing out in every industry, every company, every creative field. The performers are losing to the producers. The announcers are losing to the finishers. And the tragic part is that the performers don't even realize why they're stuck. They think they need more visibility. They think the answer is to post more, share more, network more. They're running in the wrong direction, wondering why the finish line keeps getting farther away. So here's the first question you need to ask yourself. And I want you to really sit with this one. What percentage of your day is performance versus production? Think about yesterday. How much time did you spend actually executing versus explaining, updating, coordinating, or positioning yourself? If you're honest, the number might scare you. For most people, it's 70% performance, 30% production. Some people are 90-10. They've become full-time performers of productivity with no actual productivity to show for it. The ghost ratio is the opposite. 90% production, 10% strategic reveals. That's the target. That's what we're building toward. The commentary trap is one of the most insidious productivity killers in modern work. It's the habit of narrating your work while you work. It shows up as status updates in Slack, as threads on Twitter about what you're learning, as Instagram stories about your process, as messages to your team about what you're planning to do. Every time you stop working to announce that you're working, you pay a switching cost. Your brain has to shift from execution mode to explanation mode. And explanation mode is expensive. It requires you to make your tacit knowledge explicit, to translate your intuitive process into language, to perform clarity you might not actually have yet. This is why so many people get stuck in the talking phase and never make it to the doing phase. Talking about the work becomes a substitute for the work itself. There's a particularly toxic version of this in startup culture and creative fields. It's called showing your work, and it's been packaged as virtuous. Share your process. Be transparent. Take people behind the scenes. Build in public. Sounds great in theory. In practice, it's a trap. Because here's what happens. You start a project excited and energized. You share your idea. You get some encouraging responses. That feels good, so you share more. You post about the challenges you're facing. People chime in with advice. You implement some of it. You share the results. More encouragement. You're building an audience for your process. But the project still isn't done. Weeks pass. Months pass. The audience gets bored. The encouragement dries up. You've documented the entire journey, but you haven't reached the destination. And now you're exhausted, not from doing the work, but from explaining the work. You've confused the map for the territory. The documentation became more real than the thing you were trying to document. Ghosts don't make this mistake. They understand that talking about work and doing work are two different activities, and only one of them creates value. So they shut up and ship. They resist the urge to announce. They sit with the discomfort of invisibility. They trust that the work will speak for itself when it's ready, and when they finally reveal what they've built, it lands with impact because it's not diluted by months of incremental updates. It's a complete thought, a finished product, a real result. There's no performance fatigue. There's just pure signal. Think about how this applies to your current projects. What are you announcing that you should be executing? Are you spending more time talking about your plans than implementing them? Do you find yourself seeking validation before you've created anything worth validating? These are symptoms of the commentary trap. The cure is simple but not easy. Stop talking and start finishing. Pick one significant project. Commit to completing it without mentioning your progress to anyone. Not your colleagues, not your friends, not your social media audience, just you and the work. Notice what happens. At first, you'll feel anxious. You'll want to share. You'll crave the feedback. You'll wonder if you're on the right track. Sit with that discomfort. It's your brain adjusting to the absence of external validation. Push through it. Keep working in silence. And when you emerge with something finished, something polished, something undeniable, you'll understand why ghosts guard their process so carefully. The silence isn't isolation. It's protection. It's the moat around your focus. Now let's talk about strategic opacity, because this is where people get nervous. They think I'm advocating for being secretive or withholding or antisocial. That's not it at all. Strategic opacity is about information asymmetry. It's about understanding that in a competitive environment, the information you share affects your positioning. If you tell everyone your plans before you execute them, you've given away your advantage. If you explain your methods while you're still developing them, you've armed your competition. If you're transparent about your uncertainties, you've weakened your negotiating position. Ghosts understand this instinctively. They reveal selectively. They share outcomes, not processes. They maintain enough mystique that people respect their expertise without fully understanding how they developed it. There's a concept in game theory called information asymmetry. It means that in any transaction or competition, the party with more information has an advantage. In poker, you don't show your cards until the hand is over. In chess, you don't announce your strategy. In business, you don't telegraph your moves to competitors. But for some reason, in modern work culture, we've decided that radical transparency is a virtue. We've conflated openness with integrity. We've confused disclosure with trustworthiness. And in doing so, we've handicapped ourselves. Because while you're busy being transparent, someone else is being strategic. While you're explaining your approach, someone else is executing theirs. While you're sharing your plans, someone else is already building what you're still talking about. This doesn't mean you lie. It doesn't mean you deceive. It means you're selective about what you reveal and when you reveal it. You create a protocol for disclosure. Some information is necessary to share immediately. Your team needs to know their roles. Your manager needs to know your priorities. Your clients need to know their deliverables. That's table stakes. But everything else? Everything about your methods, your timeline, your challenges, your doubts, your strategies, that's optional. And often it's better left unsaid. Not forever, but until the work is done, until you have results that prove your approach works. Then you can share from a position of strength. You can teach from a place of proven competence. You can be transparent about what worked because you're holding the evidence that it worked. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you're developing a new product feature. The traditional approach is collaborative and transparent. You brainstorm with the team. You share your research. You present multiple options. You gather feedback. You iterate in public. You keep everyone updated on progress. You run into obstacles and you discuss them openly. You're being a good team player. You're being transparent, and you're also giving away all your leverage, because now everyone knows exactly where you are in the process. They know your uncertainties. They know your timeline. They know your dependencies. And that knowledge doesn't help you. It just creates more noise, more meetings, more input, more delays. The ghost approach is different. You do the research privately. You develop the feature to a functional state before showing anyone. You identify and solve the major obstacles on your own. Then you emerge with a working prototype and clear metrics showing its impact. Now the conversation is different. You're not asking for permission or validation. You're presenting results. The discussion shifts from whether you should do it to how to scale it. You've compressed weeks of potential debate into a single decisive moment, and you did it by maintaining strategic opacity during the execution phase. You protected your work from the drag of premature feedback. You preserved your autonomy. You shipped faster because you weren't coordinating with people who didn't need to be coordinated with yet. This requires confidence. It requires a willingness to be wrong privately rather than uncertain publicly. It requires trusting your own judgment enough to make decisions without consensus. Most people can't do this. They need the group. They need the validation. They need to know that everyone agrees with the direction before they commit to it. Ghosts don't have this limitation. They've developed the discipline to execute based on their own assessment, knowing they can always pivot if the results prove them wrong. But they're not going to slow down to bring everyone along for every step of the journey. They're going to move fast, validate with data, and emerge with proof. What information are you giving away that weakens your position? Think about your last team meeting. How much did you reveal about your uncertainties? How much of your timeline did you commit to publicly? How many details about your approach did you explain before you had results to back them up? Every piece of information you volunteer is a piece of leverage you're surrendering. Sometimes that's necessary. Often it's not. Start auditing your disclosures. Start asking yourself, does this person need to know this right now? Does sharing this help me or just make me feel collaborative? Am I being transparent to build trust or to avoid the discomfort of autonomy? These questions will reveal how much unnecessary information you're broadcasting. And when you start pulling back, when you start operating with more strategic opacity, you'll feel the difference immediately. Less debate, less coordination overhead, more velocity, more control, more results. The depth vault is where the real work happens. This is your protected time, your defended space, your sacred hours where interruption is impossible and flow is guaranteed. Most people don't have this. They've surrendered their calendar to whoever wants a piece of it. They've trained everyone around them to expect immediate responses. They've optimized for availability instead of productivity, and they wonder why they never get anything meaningful done. The truth is brutal. If you're available all the time, you're not doing deep work. You're doing shallow work. You're responding, coordinating, attending, updating. You're performing productivity. But you're not producing anything that requires sustained cognitive effort. You're not building anything complex. You're not creating anything original. You're just treading water in the shallow end while wondering why you never learned to swim. Deep work isn't rare because people can't do it. It's rare because people don't defend it. They don't create the conditions that make it possible. They don't build the depth vault. So let's build yours right now. The depth vault has 3 components: time, space, and boundaries. Time means blocks of at least 4 hours. Not 2 hours, not 90 minutes. 4 minimum. Because it takes time to get into a state of flow. It takes time for your brain to warm up, to push past the surface level thinking, to access the deeper cognitive resources where the best work happens. If you're constantly working in 1-hour blocks, you're constantly ramping up and never reaching altitude. You're spending all your energy on takeoff and never getting to cruise. The 4-hour minimum ensures you have time to get deep and stay deep long enough to produce something significant. Space means an environment designed for focus. This could be a specific room. It could be a coffee shop where nobody knows you. It could be a library. It could be your office with the door closed and your phone in another room. The key is that it's a space with minimal distractions and maximum psychological association with deep work. When you enter this space, your brain knows, this is where we do the real work. This is where we go deep. This is not where we check email or browse social media or have casual conversations. The space becomes a trigger for the mental state you need. Athletes have this with training facilities. Writers have this with their desks. You need this with your depth vault. You need a space that signals to your nervous system that it's time to focus. Boundaries are the hardest part because they require you to say no. No, I'm not available for that meeting. No, I can't respond to that message right now. No, I'm not going to check my email during these hours. No, I'm not going to be interrupted. This makes people uncomfortable. They're used to access. They're used to your availability. When you start setting boundaries, they'll push back. They'll tell you it's urgent. They'll tell you they need your input. They'll make you feel like you're being difficult or uncooperative. You have to hold the line. Because here's what happens when you don't. Your depth vault collapses. The interruptions creep in. The 4-hour block becomes 3 hours, then 2, then a series of fragmented 30-minute chunks where nothing meaningful gets done. You're back in the shallow end. You're back to performing instead of producing. So you build walls. You make yourself legitimately unreachable. You turn off notifications. You close your communication apps. You tell people you have a hard stop and you won't be available. You create consequences for interruption. You make it socially costly to break into your vault time. This sounds harsh, but it's necessary, because the alternative is that everyone else's priorities hijack your time. The alternative is that you spend your life in reactive mode, responding to whatever lands in your inbox, never creating anything that requires your full cognitive capacity. And then you look back after 10 years and wonder why you never built anything significant. The answer is simple. You never defended the time to build it. Picture this in your mind. You wake up early before the messages start. You go to your vault space with a clear objective for the next 4 hours. You've done the prep work the night before, so you're not starting from zero. You have everything you need, your tools, your materials, your notes. You close the door. You silence your devices. For the first 20 minutes, your mind wanders. You think about emails you need to send later. You worry about that meeting this afternoon. You feel the urge to check your phone. This is normal. This is your brain adjusting. You acknowledge the thoughts and let them pass. You return your attention to the work. Gradually, the external world fades. The work becomes the only thing that exists. Your hands move with confidence. Your mind makes connections it couldn't make in the fragmented, shallow time. You lose track of time. When you finally surface 3.5 hours later, you're exhausted but satisfied. You've produced something real, something that didn't exist before you entered the vault. This is what deep work feels like. This is what you're capable of when you defend your cognitive resources. This is what becomes possible when you stop being available and start being productive. Now let's talk about what you're actually doing in the vault. This is where result architecture comes in. Most people approach projects backward. They think about the process first. They make elaborate plans. They create detailed timelines. They break everything down into tasks and subtasks. They build the scaffolding before they know what they're building. And then they wonder why the project never feels finished. It's because they're optimizing for activity, not outcomes. They're creating the illusion of progress through motion. But motion isn't progress. Checking things off a task list isn't progress. Progress is movement toward a specific concrete result. And if you haven't defined that result clearly, you're just wandering. Ghosts start with the outcome. They begin at the end. They ask, what does done look like? What is the specific artifact, deliverable, or state change that will exist when this project is complete? What will I be able to point to and say, this is what I built? This forces clarity. It eliminates the fuzzy middle. It prevents scope creep. Because once you know exactly what done looks like, you can work backward to figure out the minimum viable path to get there. And minimum viable is key, because most people over-engineer. They add tasks that feel productive but don't actually move them closer to the outcome. They do research they don't need. They create documentation no one will read. They optimize things that don't matter. They confuse effort with effectiveness. They're busy, but they're not strategic. The ghost filter is simple. Does this task directly create the outcome? Or does it just make me feel productive? If it's the latter, cut it. Be ruthless. Because every task you add to the project is a tax on your time and attention. Every task that doesn't compound toward the result is a distraction from the tasks that do. The 80-20 principle applies here with devastating clarity. 80% of your results will come from 20% of your effort. Your job is to identify that 20% and focus there with laser intensity. Ignore the rest. Don't optimize the rest. Don't perfect the rest. Just do the 20% that matters and ship the result. Here's what this looks like in practice. You're building a sales presentation for a major pitch. The traditional approach is to make it comprehensive. You include company history. You showcase all your products. You create beautiful slides for every possible question they might ask. You spend days on design. You write detailed speaker notes. You practice until every word is perfect. You've created a masterpiece. And you've also wasted 80% of your time. Because in any pitch, there are only 2 or 3 slides that matter. The slides that show the specific value you're delivering to this specific client. The slides that prove you understand their problem and have a credible solution. Everything else is noise. It's there to make you feel prepared, but it doesn't move the needle. The ghost approach is to identify those 2 or 3 critical slides and make them undeniable. Spend all your time there. Make those slides so clear, so compelling, so backed by evidence that the decision becomes obvious. Then add the minimum context needed to support them. That's it. 5 great slides beat 50 mediocre ones. Every time, this mindset shift is uncomfortable because it requires you to let go of completeness. You have to accept that you're not going to cover everything. You're not going to address every possible concern. You're not going to create the perfect artifact. You're going to create the minimum artifact that achieves the outcome. And that's enough. Actually, it's more than enough. It's strategic. Because while you're spending 20 hours creating 5 perfect slides, your competitor is spending 100 hours creating 50 decent slides. You're going to ship first. You're going to iterate faster. You're going to learn from real feedback instead of hypothetical concerns. You're going to win. So look at your current project. What's the outcome? Be specific. Not launch the product, but get 50 paying customers using the core feature. Not write the book, but complete a manuscript. With 10 chapters that each deliver a specific insight. Not improve team productivity, but reduce average project completion time by 30%. Once you have the specific outcome, list everything you're currently doing or planning to do for this project. Now be honest. Which tasks directly create that outcome? Which tasks are just making you feel busy? Which tasks could you eliminate entirely without affecting the result? I guarantee you can cut at least half of what's on your list, maybe more. And when you do, you'll feel lighter. You'll see the path more clearly. You'll move faster, and you'll ship the result before someone else does. Velocity through silence is one of the most counterintuitive principles in this entire framework. We've been taught that collaboration accelerates work, that teams accomplish more than individuals, that communication is key to productivity. And in some contexts, that's true. But in many contexts, it's catastrophically wrong. Because collaboration has costs, coordination overhead, meeting time, alignment discussions, consensus building, compromise. Every person you add to a project adds complexity. Every stakeholder you need to keep updated adds communication burden. Every approval layer adds delay. And often the benefits don't outweigh the costs. Often, you'd be faster and better off working alone. This is heresy in most organizational cultures. We worship collaboration. We celebrate cross-functional teams. We measure success by how well we work together. But we don't measure the cost. We don't count the hours lost to meetings that could have been decisions made by one person with clear authority. We don't calculate the velocity lost to gathering input from people who don't have the context to provide useful input. We don't acknowledge that consensus often produces mediocrity because it smooths out the edges where excellence lives. We just assume collaboration is always good, and we pay the price in slow-moving projects that take twice as long as they should because we're coordinating with too many people who don't need to be. Coordinated with. Ghosts understand when to go, solo and when to coordinate. They default to solo execution and only involve others when the benefits clearly outweigh the costs. They ask, does this person's involvement make the outcome better enough to justify the coordination overhead? If yes, involve them. If no, don't. It's that simple. And most of the time, the answer is no. Most of the time, you can make better progress by making the decision yourself, executing it yourself, and showing others the result afterward. This requires confidence in your own judgment. It requires a willingness to be accountable for decisions without hiding behind group consensus. It requires accepting that sometimes you'll be wrong, and when you are, you'll course correct quickly instead of. Let me tell you about two software engineers I know. Both were tasked with rebuilding a critical internal tool. Engineer A took the collaborative approach. He scheduled kickoff meetings with all the stakeholders. He created a shared document for requirements. He set up weekly check-ins to review progress. He posted updates in Slack. He asked for feedback at every stage. He wanted everyone to feel included. 6 months later, the tool was maybe 60% done. It had a lot of features that different stakeholders had requested, but it was bloated and slow. The core functionality was buried under edge cases that barely anyone would use, and Engineer A was exhausted from managing all the input and expectations. Engineer B took the solo approach. He interviewed stakeholders once at the beginning to understand the core problem. Then he went dark. For 3 months, no one heard from him except brief responses to direct questions. He built the tool his way, focused on the 20% of use cases that represented 80% of the value. He made decisions without asking permission. He cut features that seemed important but weren't essential. At the end of 3 months, he emerged with a working tool. It was fast. It was simple. It solved the core problem elegantly. He demoted to stakeholders. They had some suggestions. He implemented the ones that made sense and ignored the rest. Within 4 months total, the tool was in production and people loved it. Same timeline as Engineer A's project, but one was finished and one wasn't. The difference? Engineer B understood that velocity comes from minimizing coordination, not maximizing it. This doesn't mean you never collaborate. It means you're strategic about when and how you collaborate. You use asynchronous communication instead of synchronous meetings whenever possible. You give people deadlines to provide input, and you move forward without them if they miss the deadline. You make it clear that you're the decision maker and you're gathering information, not seeking approval. You protect your execution time from being hijacked by other people's need to feel involved. And when you do involve people, you make it efficient. Clear agenda, clear roles, clear next steps. You don't let coordination become a full-time job that prevents you from actually doing the job. Ask yourself this: how many people actually need to be involved in your current project? Not how many want to be involved. Not how many would feel left out if they weren't involved. How many are actually essential to achieving the outcome? Write down that number. Now compare it to how many people you're currently coordinating with. If the second number is bigger than the first, you've identified your velocity problem. You're spending more time managing people than making progress. The fix is to ruthlessly narrow the circle. Keep only the essential players informed. Make decisions without waiting for everyone's input. Ship first, gather feedback second. You'll move faster and produce better work because you're not designing by committee. The finishing doctrine is what separates ghosts from everyone else. Most people are professional starters. They're great at beginnings. They love the excitement of new projects. They brainstorm with enthusiasm. They plan with detail. They launch with energy. And then around the 70% mark, they stall. The project gets hard. The initial excitement fades. New, shinier projects appear. They get bored. They get distracted. They tell themselves they'll come back to it later, and the project joins the graveyard of unfinished work that haunts their conscience and proves to everyone that they're all talk and no follow-through. Finishing is a discipline. It's not about inspiration or motivation. It's about pushing through when the work stops being fun. It's about doing the unglamorous parts. The debugging, the proofreading, the polish, the edge cases, the details that nobody notices until they're missing. It's about resisting the 70% temptation. That moment when the project is mostly done, when you could show it to people and get some validation, when it's good enough to share but not good enough to ship. This is where most people break. They share the 70% version. They get feedback. They feel accomplished. And they never get to 100% because they already got the reward. They already got the attention. The motivation to finish evaporates because they've already experienced the social validation that was supposed to come at the end. Ghosts don't fall for this trap. They know that 70% done is the same as 0% done. They know that almost finished is indistinguishable from never started in terms of real-world impact. They know that the market only rewards shipping. It doesn't reward trying. It doesn't reward getting close. It rewards finished products, delivered results, completed work. So they keep their work private until it's truly ready. They resist the urge to reveal early. They sit with the discomfort of having invested significant time in something that nobody knows about yet, and they use that discomfort as fuel. They channel it into finishing. Because the only way to relieve the tension is to complete the work, to get to 100%, to ship the thing. The details that matter are always at the finish line. This is another uncomfortable truth. The first 80% of any project is relatively easy. You're working in broad strokes. You're getting the main pieces in place. But the last 20% is where quality lives. It's where you fix the inconsistencies, where you refine the user experience, where you handle the edge cases, where you make it actually great instead of merely functional. Most people don't do this work because it's tedious and it doesn't feel like progress. They've already built the thing. Now they're just polishing. But polish is what people remember. Polish is what separates professional work from amateur work. Polish is what makes people say, "Wow, this is really good," instead of, "Yeah, it's okay, I guess." And polish only happens when you finish. Here's the ghost reveal strategy. Maximum impact from silent buildup. You've been working in silence for weeks or months. Nobody knows what you're building. Nobody's watching. Nobody's encouraging you. Then when it's truly done, when it's polished and tested and ready for judgment, you emerge. You don't announce it with fanfare. You don't hype it up. You just quietly release it to the people who matter. And because it's actually finished, because it's actually good, it speaks for itself. People are surprised. Where did this come from? When did you have time to build this? I didn't even know you were working on this. That surprise is your competitive advantage. That's the power of the silent buildup. While everyone else was narrating their process and getting incremental feedback, you were actually finishing. And now you're holding something real while they're still talking about what they're going to build someday. Think about your backlog. How many projects are sitting there at 70, 80, 90% complete? How many things have you started that you never finished? How many times have you announced intentions that you didn't follow through on? This is your credibility debt. Every unfinished project is a withdrawal from your reputation account. Every announced plan that didn't materialize trains people not to take you seriously. The way to reverse this is simple but brutal. Pick one unfinished project and commit to finishing it without mentioning it to anyone. Not to get feedback, not to get encouragement, just to prove to yourself that you can finish something. Choose something meaningful but achievable, not your magnum opus, something you can complete in a reasonable time frame if you focus. Then go into stealth mode and finish it. Polish it, make it actually good. And when you release it, pay attention to how people respond differently to finished work versus works in progress. That response difference will teach you everything you need to know about why finishing matters. Compounding in the dark is how you build skills that seem to appear out of nowhere. It's how you become the person who suddenly speaks a language fluently, or masters a technical skill, or develops expertise in a new domain. Everyone else sees the emergence and assumes you're naturally talented. They don't see the 1,000 hours you put in while they were broadcasting their practice. They don't see the deliberate practice you did in private while they were sharing their learning journey for likes. They don't see the failures you experienced and corrected without an audience. They just see the result. Competence that seems to have materialized from nothing. There's a profound advantage to learning in private. When you're learning publicly, you're performing learning. You're curating your practice. You're conscious of how you look to your audience. This consciousness creates drag. It slows you down. It makes you risk-averse. You don't want to look foolish, so you stick to practicing things you're already decent at. You don't push into the uncomfortable territory where real growth happens. You're more concerned with documentation than development. You take photos of your practice instead of just practicing. You write threads about lessons you're learning instead of just learning them. And all of this performance siphons energy away from the actual skill acquisition. You're learning slower because you're trying to teach before you've mastered the material yourself. Learning in private removes all that friction. There's no audience to perform for. There's no content to create. There's just you and the skill. You can fail spectacularly without embarrassment. You can try weird approaches without judgment. You can focus entirely on improvement without any attention. The 1,000-hour rule still applies. You need significant deliberate practice to develop real expertise in anything. But the question is, are you going to spend 1,000 hours practicing or 1,000 hours performing practice? Because those are different activities with different outcomes. One makes you skillful, one makes you visible. Most people choose visibility. They document the journey. They share their struggles. They build an audience of people watching them learn. And at the end of the 1,000 hours, they're mediocre at the skill, but good at talking about learning the skill. Meanwhile, someone else spent those same 1,000 hours in silent, focused practice. No documentation, no audience, just repetition and refinement. At the end, they're actually expert level. They can do the thing at a professional standard, and when they emerge, they're immediately taken seriously because their competence is undeniable. So what's the skill you've been wanting to develop? What's the thing you know would 10x your market value if you could do it at a high level? Maybe it's a technical skill. Maybe it's a language. Maybe it's a creative capability. Whatever it is, commit to 90 days of silent acquisition. Don't tell anyone what you're learning. Don't post about it. Don't share your progress. Just practice every day. Put in the time. And at the end of 90 days, debut the skill only when you're undeniably competent. Not when you're still figuring it out. Not when you're kind of okay at it. When you can do it at a level that makes people respect your ability, that's when you reveal it. And the response you get will teach you everything about why silence beats performance during the learning phase. Now we need to talk about the emergence. Because if you disappear and execute but never emerge, you've just become a hermit. That's not the goal. The goal is to emerge strategically, at the right time, with the right proof, to the right people. This is where you collect the wins. This is where your silent work translates into reputation, opportunity, and leverage. The reveal strategy is about timing and positioning. It's about understanding that how you present finished work matters almost as much as the quality of the work itself. Because context shapes perception. A great piece of work presented poorly gets ignored. A good piece of work presented strategically gets amplified. Let me tell you about a marketing consultant I worked with named Sarah. She spent 6 months invisible. Her clients knew she was working on their campaigns, but nobody in her broader network heard from her. No LinkedIn posts, no tweets about marketing insights, no newsletter, radio silence. Her friends in the industry started asking mutual connections if she was okay. Had she left the field? Meanwhile, Sarah was executing. She was running experiments for 3 different clients, testing messaging, optimizing funnels, building case studies with real data. She wasn't theorizing about marketing. She wasn't sharing hot takes about the latest trends. She was doing the actual work and measuring the actual results. 6 months in, she had something nobody else in her space had. 3 detailed case studies showing how she'd increased revenue by an average of 47% for companies in different industries. Not vanity metrics, not engagement rates, actual revenue impact with full transparency on methods and results. She wrote 1 long-form piece breaking down her approach, backed by the data from those 3 clients. She sent it to 20 carefully selected people, 10 current clients who could benefit from similar strategies, 10 prospects she'd been cultivating relationships with over the past year. and 5 influencers in her space who respected substance over hype. Within 2 weeks, she had 4 new client contracts worth more than she'd made in the entire previous year. Within a month, 2 of those influencers had shared her work with their audiences, not because she asked, but because the case studies were so strong they wanted to be associated with quality work. Within 3 months, she was turning down projects because she was overbooked, all from one strategic reveal after 6 months of silence. Compare that to her peers who were posting daily tips, sharing inspirational quotes, commenting on everyone's content, and staying top of mind. They were getting likes. She was getting contracts. They were building audiences. She was building wealth. The difference was patience and proof. She waited until she had undeniable evidence before she emerged. She didn't reveal her hypothesis. She revealed her results. She didn't share her journey. She shared her destination. And because she'd been silent for so long, when she finally spoke, people listened. There was no fatigue. There was no noise. Just pure signal backed by data that couldn't be argued with. That's the power of the strategic reveal. The core principle is proof first. You never reveal works in progress. You never share half-baked ideas. You never ask for feedback on early drafts. You only emerge when you have something finished, tested, and ready for judgment. This means you're always presenting from a position of confidence. You're not seeking validation. You're not asking permission. You're showing evidence. Here's what I built. Here's how it works. Here's the impact it's already having. This is a completely different energy than, here's what I'm thinking about building, or here's my prototype. What do you think? One energy commands respect. The other invites debate. One makes you look like someone who executes. The other makes you look like someone who needs hand-holding. Let me break down exactly what proof-first communication looks like in practice. You're presenting a new tool you built. Wrong approach. Hey team, I've been working on something that I think could help with our workflow. It's still rough, but I wanted to get your thoughts before I go further. Would love feedback on whether this direction makes sense. Everything about that positioning is weak. You're asking permission. You're inviting criticism of something incomplete. You're creating an opportunity for people to derail your work before it's even finished. Right approach. I built a tool that automates the data entry process we've been doing manually. I've been testing it for the past 2 weeks. It reduces the time spent on this task from 4 hours to 20 minutes with 0 errors. I've processed 300 transactions through it successfully. Here's a demo of how it works, and here's the documentation for the team. It's ready to deploy today if we want to. See the difference? You're not asking if you should build it. You built it. You're not asking if it works. You tested it. You're not asking if people want it. You're showing them the measurable value it creates. The conversation shifts immediately from should we to how do we scale this. This approach requires that you do the work to validate your idea before revealing it. You can't just build something and declare it's great. You need to test it. You need evidence. You need metrics. You need to be able to demonstrate value, not just claim value. This is why ghosts spend time in the validation phase that most people skip. They're not rushing to reveal. They're ensuring that when they do reveal, the case is airtight. They know that one strong reveal with solid proof is worth more than 10 weak reveals with hopes and theories. When you're ready to reveal, you need to think about audience segmentation. Not everyone needs to know about everything you've built. Different audiences care about different outcomes. Your reveal should be tailored to the audience that matters most for the specific result you're sharing. If you built a tool that saves your team time, reveal it to your manager with clear metrics on efficiency gains. If you developed a thought piece on industry trends, share it with people who influence hiring decisions in your field. If you created a product feature, demo it to users who will actually use it and can provide meaningful feedback. Strategic reveals are targeted, not broadcast. You're not trying to tell everyone. You're trying to tell the right people who can do something valuable with the information. Sequencing matters too. If you have multiple results to reveal, don't dump them all at once. Space them out strategically. Create a cadence of consistent delivery. This builds a reputation for reliability. People start to expect quality from you. They start to look forward to what you'll build next. This is completely different from the person who works in public, announces everything, and rarely ships. That person becomes background noise. You become signal. You become the person who might be quiet most of the time. But when you speak up, people pay attention because they know you're about to show them something real. Here's what the actual reveal looks like. You don't hype it. You don't build suspense. You don't tease it. You just present it matter-of-factly. I built this thing. Here's what it does. Here's why it matters. Here are the results so far. Then you let the work speak. You answer questions. You provide context if needed. But you don't oversell. You don't make grand claims. You let the evidence make the argument. This restraint is powerful. It makes you credible. It makes people trust that you're showing them something substantive, not performing confidence about something half-baked. The contrast between your silence during development and your clarity during the reveal creates impact. People weren't expecting this from you. You've been quiet, and now you're holding something undeniable. That cognitive dissonance works in your favor. The anti-hype reveal is crucial. In a world of overpromising and under-delivering, you're doing the opposite. You promised nothing. You delivered something real. This resets people's expectations of you. The key is letting others narrate your excellence. This is third-party credibility, and it's more powerful than any self-promotion you could do. When you tell people you're good at something, they're skeptical. When someone else tells them you're good at something, they believe it. So your job isn't to promote yourself. Your job is to do work so good that other people naturally want to promote you. You do this by consistently delivering results that make other people look good. When you make your manager successful, they talk about you to their peers. When you solve a painful problem for a client, they recommend you to others. When you contribute something valuable to a project, your teammates remember and advocate for you on future projects. You're not asking for these endorsements. You're earning them through the quality and reliability of your work. This requires patience. Results-based reputation builds slowly. You're not going viral. You're not gaining followers rapidly. You're steadily accumulating evidence that you're someone who executes. Over months and years, this compounds. People forget what you said. They forget your personality. They remember what you delivered. They remember that you were the person who came through when others didn't. They remember that you didn't need hand-holding or constant encouragement. You just figured it out and shipped it. This memory becomes your brand. It becomes your calling card. And it opens doors that no amount of self-promotion could open because it's grounded in proof, not promises. How do you want to be known? For your personality or your results? For what you say or what you do? For your presence or your output? These questions clarify everything. If you want to be known for results, you have to let the results do the talking. You have to trust that evidence speaks louder than assertion. You have to develop the confidence to stay quiet and let your work represent you. Most people can't do this because they're too insecure. They need the constant reinforcement of being seen. They need to narrate themselves into existence. But you're not most people. You understand that real respect comes from real results, not real-time updates. Now let's address the practical reality of selective presence. You can't disappear forever. You live in a social and professional world. You have obligations. You have relationships. You have a network. The question isn't whether to be present. It's when and how to be present strategically. The 80-20 rule applies here powerfully. 80% of your social and professional presence probably generates 20% of the value in your life. 20% of your presence generates 80% of the value. Your job is to identify that 20% and focus there ruthlessly. This means auditing your obligations. Every recurring meeting, every social commitment, every networking event, every conference, every coffee chat. List them all. Now ask, what is the actual return on investment for each of these? What relationships are strengthened? What opportunities are created? What ideas are exchanged? What problems are solved? Be honest, because most of your presence is probably low ROI. You're showing up out of obligation or habit or fear of missing out. You're not there because it's actually advancing your goals. It's just preventing you from working on things that would advance your goals. So you eliminate the bottom half. Just stop attending. Stop accepting. Decline politely but firmly. Protect your time like it's your most valuable resource because it is. For the top 20%, the high ROI appearances, you attend fully. You're not distracted. You're not checking your phone. You're not half present while thinking about the work you should be doing. You're there completely because you've determined this is worth your full attention. And because you're only attending the highest value events, you have the energy to be fully engaged. You're not spread thin across 20 mediocre commitments. You're concentrated on 4 excellent ones. This is how you maintain relationships and reputation without sacrificing execution time. You're selectively visible. You show up where it matters. You're absent everywhere else. The art of strategic absence is understanding that being at every event, every meeting, every gathering, actually makes you less memorable, not more. When you're always there, you become part of the furniture. You're expected. You're ambient. People stop noticing you. But when you're rarely there, when you only appear for important moments, people pay attention. Your presence has weight. People wonder what you've been working on. They're curious about where you've been. And when you do engage, you have something substantive to contribute because you've been doing real work instead of performing presence. You're not just showing up to be seen. You're showing up because you have value to add. Maintaining mystique is about protecting the space between your appearances. You don't over-explain your absence. You don't apologize for not being at every event. You don't justify your choices. You're just not there most of the time. And when people ask where you've been, you're vague but friendly. Working on some projects is sufficient. You don't owe anyone a detailed accounting of your time. And the less you explain, the more interesting you become. People fill in the gaps with generous assumptions. They assume you're busy with important work. They assume you're in demand. They assume you're selective about how you spend your time. These assumptions work in your favor. They elevate your positioning without you having to do any positioning work. So look at your calendar for the next month. How much of it is filled with low ROI presence? How many obligations could you eliminate without any real consequence? How much time could you reclaim for deep work if you were more selective about your appearances? The answer is probably at least 10 to 20 hours per month, maybe more. That's 10 to 20 hours you could be spending in your depth vault, executing on projects that actually matter. That's the difference between being busy and being productive. That's the difference between appearing to work and actually working. Start declining. Start protecting. Start being strategically absent. The first time will feel uncomfortable. The 10th time will feel liberating. If you lead a team, everything I've been teaching you needs to scale to the organizational level. Because if you're working like a ghost but your team is trapped in performance theater, you're limited by their output. Your leverage is capped. The ghost organization is a team or company that systematically eliminates noise and rewards results. It's a culture where people aren't judged by their visibility but by their deliverables. It's an environment where deep work is protected and shallow work is minimized. Building this is hard because it goes against every conventional wisdom about management, but it's worth it because it unlocks leverage that most organizations never access. The first step is eliminating performative work at the team level. This means conducting a ruthless audit of everything your team does: meetings, reports, status updates, team building activities, recognition programs, internal communication protocols, all of it. Ask for each item. Does this directly contribute to our outcomes, or is it just making us feel like a team? If it's the latter, kill it. This will make people uncomfortable. People are attached to rituals. They're attached to the social aspects of work. They'll resist. You have to hold the line. Because every hour your team spends on performative work is an hour they're not spending on productive work. And you're competing against teams that have figured this out, that have eliminated the performance tax, that are using all their energy for execution. The results-only work environment is the model here. People are evaluated purely on what they deliver, not how they deliver it. Not how many hours they're visible. Not how many meetings they attend. Not how responsive they are on Slack. Just, did you produce the outcome you committed to producing? If yes, you're successful. If no, you're not. This clarity is liberating for high performers. They don't have to perform presence. They can optimize entirely for output. They can work at weird hours if that's when they're most productive. They can disappear for days if that's what their depth work requires. The only thing that matters is the result. This approach terrifies low performers because they can't hide behind busyness anymore. They actually have to produce. That's a feature, not a bug. You want the people who can't produce to self-select out. Hiring for execution over extroversion is critical. Most interview processes select for people who are good at interviews. These are often not the same people who are good at actual work. Interviews reward social skills, articulateness, confidence, polish. These are fine qualities, but they're not the most important ones. What you actually want are people who can disappear into work and emerge with results. People who don't need constant direction or encouragement. People who can handle ambiguity and autonomy. People who finish things. These people might not interview as well. They might be quieter. They might not sell themselves as effectively. Your hiring process needs to identify them anyway. This means focusing less on how they present and more on what they've built. Portfolio over personality. Demonstrated execution over stated intentions. Creating systems that reward silence and output is the structural change that makes everything else sustainable. If your promotion process rewards people who are visible and vocal, you'll get a culture of performance. If your compensation system rewards hours worked instead of value created, you'll get a culture of. This requires a level of comfort with ambiguity that most managers don't have. They want to know what's happening. They want visibility into progress. They want to feel in control. Ghost leadership requires letting go of that need. It requires trusting that uncertainty during the process doesn't mean uncertainty about the outcome. The outcome is certain because the person is accountable and capable. The process is opaque because they're doing deep work, and constant status updates would slow them down. You have to be comfortable with that trade-off. And if you can be, you unlock performance that micromanaged teams can never achieve. Because your people aren't spending energy managing you. They're spending energy executing the work. Does your team culture reward activity or accomplishment? Look at who gets recognized. Look at who gets promoted. Look at who gets the best projects. Are they the people who are always visible, always in meetings, always available? Or are they the people who consistently ship quality work, regardless of how visible they are during the process? If it's the former, you have a performance culture. If it's the latter, you have a results culture. And if you have a performance culture, you're leaving massive productivity gains on the table. You're optimizing for the wrong thing. The fix is cultural change, which is hard but possible. It starts with you modeling ghost principles and rewarding people who do the same. Sustaining this approach is the final challenge. Because the default state is noise. The default state is performance. The default state is constant availability and shallow work. You have to actively fight against that default every day. This is where the discipline system comes in. You need personal practices that keep you anchored in ghost mode, even when external pressure pushes you toward visibility. The weekly ghost audit is a simple but powerful practice. Every Sunday you review the past week and calculate your noise-to-results ratio. How many hours did you spend in deep work versus shallow work? How many projects did you move forward versus how many meetings did you attend? How many results did you produce versus how many updates did you give about work you're planning to do? Be honest in this accounting. The numbers don't lie. If your ratio is off, you course correct the following week. Let me give you the exact framework for your weekly ghost audit. Set aside 30 minutes every Sunday evening. Open a simple spreadsheet or document. Create 4 columns: deep work hours, shallow work hours, results produced, and noise generated. For deep work hours, count only the time you spent in focused, uninterrupted execution, not meetings where you discussed execution, not emails about execution, actual hands-on keyboard or deep thinking time. Be ruthless in your counting. If you were interrupted even once during a block, that hour doesn't count as deep work. Most people are shocked when they do this honestly. They think they're doing 20 hours of deep work per week. They're actually doing 6. For shallow work hours, count everything else: meetings, email, Slack, status updates, coordination, all of it. Don't judge yourself here. Just count accurately. For results produced, list specific, concrete outcomes. Completed draft of proposal counts. Made progress on proposal doesn't count. Shipped version 2.0 of feature counts. Fixed some bugs doesn't count unless you can name specific bugs and show they're resolved. You're looking for binary outcomes. Done or not done. Shipped or not shipped. Completed or still in progress. For noise generated, count instances where you talked about work instead of doing work. Status update messages. Announcement posts. Process explanations. All the meta work about work. Again, no judgment. Just data collection. At the end of this 30-minute audit, calculate your ratio. Divide deep work hours by total work hours. That's your focus percentage. Divide results produced by noise generated. That's your output to performance ratio. These two numbers tell you everything about whether you're working like a ghost or working like a performer. Target ratios. Your focus percentage should be above 50%. If it's below that, you're spending more time in shallow work than deep work. Your output to performance ratio should be at least 3 to 1. For every piece of noise you generate, you should have 3 concrete results to show. If your ratios are off, you know exactly what to fix the following week. More ruthless calendar protection, more boundary setting, more declining of non-essential meetings, more silence, less announcement. The audit makes your drift visible before it becomes a crisis. Now let's talk about the relapse proofing plan, because you will relapse. Everyone does. You'll have a week where you slip back into old patterns. You'll attend too many meetings because you felt social pressure. You'll post an update about a project before it's finished because you wanted validation. You'll say yes to a commitment you should have declined because you didn't want to seem difficult. These relapses are normal. They're not failure. They're data. They show you where your discipline is weakest and where your environment needs better guardrails. The key is catching relapses early and having a protocol for getting back on track. Here's your relapse proofing system. First, identify your personal trigger patterns. What situations make you most likely to abandon ghost principles? For most people, it's one of three things: social pressure, uncertainty anxiety, or validation hunger. Social pressure is when you feel like you need to be visible to maintain relationships or status. You see everyone else posting and you feel left out. You get invited to things and you say yes even though you know it will derail your deep work. Uncertainty anxiety is when you're not sure if you're on the right track and you seek external input to feel more confident. You reveal early work to get feedback because sitting alone with uncertainty is uncomfortable. Validation hunger is when you crave recognition and you announce accomplishments prematurely just to hear people say, "Good job." You know the work isn't finished, but you can't wait for the reward that comes with finishing. Which of these three is your primary trigger? Be honest. For me, it's validation hunger. I get excited about what I'm building and I want to share it. I have to actively fight that urge. Your trigger might be different. Once you know it, you can design interventions. If your trigger is social pressure, your intervention is having a prepared script for declining invitations. I'm in a deep work phase right now and keeping my calendar light, but I'd love to connect once this project ships. Practice saying that until it feels natural. If your trigger is uncertainty anxiety, your intervention is scheduling specific decision points instead of seeking constant reassurance. I'll execute this phase for 3 weeks, then evaluate whether to pivot. Until then, I'm committed to this direction. If your trigger is validation hunger, your intervention is finding a replacement reward. Instead of getting dopamine from announcing progress, give yourself a reward for hitting milestones. A great meal, a day off, a small purchase you've been wanting, something that scratches the same itch without requiring an audience. Second, set up circuit breakers. These are automatic systems that stop you from relapsing even when your willpower is weak. For example, if your relapse pattern is spending too much time on social media announcing your work, delete the apps from your phone during execution phases. Not just log out. Delete them. Make it hard to relapse. If your relapse pattern is accepting too many meetings, block your calendar in advance. Put fake meetings on there if you need to. Deep work block is a meeting as far as your calendar is concerned. If people try to book over it, your calendar says you're unavailable. If your relapse pattern is over-explaining your process, draft an autoresponder. I'm in execution mode and keeping communication minimal. I'll share full updates when the project completes. For urgent issues, text me. Circuit breakers work because they eliminate the decision moment. You don't have to exercise discipline in the moment. You exercised it once when you set up the system, and now the system protects you. Third, have a rapid recovery protocol. When you catch yourself relapsing, you don't spiral. You don't beat yourself up. You don't think I've ruined everything. You just activate the recovery protocol. Here's what that looks like. As soon as you notice you're relapsing, stop immediately. Don't finish the meeting you shouldn't have accepted. Leave early. Don't post the update you were about to share. Close the app. Don't continue the conversation you know is pulling you toward performance mode. Extract yourself politely but firmly. Then go back to your weekly audit and identify what triggered the relapse. Update your circuit breakers to prevent that trigger in the future. Finally, schedule a deep work block for the next day. The fastest way to recover from a performance relapse is to get back into production mode immediately. Don't wait. The longer you stay in performance mode, the harder it is to shift back. Now I want to walk you through a 30-day ghost mode challenge. This is an intensive immersion designed to rewire your work habits and prove to yourself that this approach actually works. The challenge has 3 phases: Foundation Week, Execution Weeks, and Emergence Week. Each phase has specific daily micro-challenges that build on each other. This isn't theory. This is the practical implementation guide for becoming a ghost. Foundation Week, days 1 through 7. Your goal this week is to create the infrastructure for ghost mode work. Day 1. Conduct your first weekly audit. Day 6. Conduct an information audit. Go through all your communication from the past week. Identify 3 things you shared that you didn't need to share. 3 pieces of noise you generated that didn't contribute to outcomes. Write down what they were and why you shared them. This awareness will help you catch yourself before generating noise in the future. Day 7. Write your ghost commitment. Complete the sentence, "I work like a ghost because," in your own words. Write it somewhere you'll see it daily. This is your North Star when you're tempted to relapse. Execution Weeks, days 8 through 26. This is where you actually live the ghost principles. Each day has a micro-challenge designed to reinforce the discipline. Day 8. Execute your first deep work block. 4 hours minimum, phone off. Apps closed. Door shut if you have one. Pick one of your 3 high-leverage activities and make meaningful progress. At the end, document what you accomplished. Not for sharing, for your own records. Day 9. Practice strategic declining. Say no to at least 2 requests today that would normally pull you into shallow work. A meeting that isn't essential. A conversation that would derail your focus. A request to provide input on something that isn't your responsibility. Use your prepared script. Notice how people react. Most will respect it. Day 10. Silent Execution Day. Your challenge today is to not mention your work to anyone unless directly asked. No status updates, no process sharing, no talking about what you're planning to do. Just do it. This will feel unnatural. That discomfort is your addiction to validation showing itself. Sit with it. Day 11. Validate privately. Make measurable progress on your stealth project and document the evidence, not qualitative feelings. Quantitative proof. What specific outcome can you point to? Write it down. This is practice for your eventual reveal. Day 12. Second deep work block. 4 hours on your stealth project. You should be roughly 40% complete by now if you sized it correctly. If you're behind, that's data. It means you either underestimated the work or you're not protecting your deep work time effectively. Adjust accordingly. Day 13. Communication Efficiency Challenge. Every message you send today must be under 5 sentences. No long explanations, no process descriptions, just essential information. This trains you to communicate outcomes instead of commentary. Day 14. End of week 2 audit. 30 minutes reviewing your progress. Calculate your ratios again. Compare to week 1 baseline. You should see improvement. If you don't, something in your system isn't working. Go back to your circuit breakers and strengthen them. Day 15. Practice asymmetric disclosure. Today, when people ask what you're working on, give true but minimal answers. A few client projects instead of detailed descriptions. Developing a new tool instead of explaining the entire concept. You're not lying. You're just not volunteering information that doesn't help you. Day 16. Third deep work block. You're hitting the messy middle of your stealth project now. This is where most people quit. The initial excitement has worn off. The finish line isn't visible yet. This is the discipline test. Push through. Make progress even when it's not fun. Day 17. Consume nothing, create everything. Today is a media fast. No social media, no news, no browsing, only creating, only executing. This removes the comparison trap and the temptation to perform. Day 18. Feature cut exercise. Look at your stealth project honestly. What can you eliminate and still achieve the core outcome? Cut it, ruthlessly. This is practice for the 80-20 principle. Most people add features. Ghosts subtract until only the essential remains. Day 19. Fourth deep work block. Your stealth project should be 70% complete. If you're not there, you need to either extend your timeline or cut more scope. Don't compromise on quality by rushing. Don't compromise on shipping by over-engineering. Find the balance. Day 20. Anticipate questions. Your stealth project will eventually be revealed. What questions will people ask? What will they want to know? Prepare answers now. Practice presenting the outcome concisely. You should be able to explain what you built, why it matters, and what results it creates in under 3 minutes. Day 21. Third weekly audit. Calculate your ratios. You should be seeing consistent improvement now. Your deep work percentage should be climbing. Your output to performance ratio should be widening. If not, identify the specific patterns that are holding you back and address them this week. Day 22. Handle one pushback situation. Someone will challenge your lower availability this week. They'll want you in a meeting you don't need to be in. They'll ask why you're not as responsive. This is your opportunity to practice holding boundaries. Use your scripts. Be polite but firm. Don't over-explain, just redirect. Day 23. Fifth deep work block. Polish phase begins. Your stealth project is mostly complete. Now you're refining, handling edge cases, improving quality. This is the unglamorous work that separates shipped products from abandoned projects. Do it. Day 24. Pre-reveal review. Look at your stealth project with fresh eyes. Is it actually ready? Is it polished? Is it documented? Is the value clear? If not, don't reveal yet. Extend your timeline. This is practice for never showing 70% work. Only show 100% work. Day 25. Sixth deep work block. Final polish, final testing, final validation. Make sure the evidence is airtight. Make sure you can demonstrate value, not just claim it. Day 26. Reveal preparation. Identify exactly who needs to see your completed stealth project. Not everyone, just the people who matter. Craft your reveal message using the Proof First framework. What you built, how it works, what impact it has. Evidence only. Schedule your reveal for tomorrow. Emergence Week, days 27 through 30. Day 27. Execute your reveal. Send your message to your carefully selected audience. Share your completed stealth project with proof of value. Then go silent again. Don't refresh your email waiting for responses. Don't check for reactions. You revealed. Now you return to work. Day 28. Collect data. People are responding to your reveal. Some are impressed. Some have questions. Some want to work with you. Notice the difference in how people treat finished work versus works in progress. Notice how the silence before the reveal created impact. Document this feeling. You'll need to remember it the next time you're tempted to announce prematurely. Day 29. Fourth weekly audit. This one includes reflection on the full 30 days. How much has changed? What's your deep work percentage now compared to day 1? What's your output to performance ratio? How many complete results did you produce versus how many you produced in a typical month before this challenge? The numbers should be dramatically different. If they're not, you didn't actually do the challenge. You performed doing the challenge. There's a difference. Day 30. Set your ghost rhythm. The challenge is ending, but the practice continues. Based on what you learned, design your sustainable ghost mode schedule. How many deep work blocks per week? How often will you do your weekly audit? What circuit breakers are non-negotiable? What's your reveal cadence? Every month? Every quarter? When you have 3 strong results to show? Decide now. Write it down. This is your new operating system. After the 30-day challenge, you'll have proof that this works. You'll have experienced the difference between performing productivity and being productive. You'll have finished something significant in silence. You'll have revealed it strategically and seen the impact, and you'll understand viscerally why noise and results are inversely correlated. But understanding isn't enough. You need to make this permanent. You need to make ghost mode your default, not an experiment. This audit also helps you recognize relapse patterns. Because you will relapse. You'll have weeks where you slip back into performance mode. You'll get pulled into more meetings than usual. You'll feel the urge to overshare about a project. You'll start seeking validation before you finish the work. These are normal human tendencies. The audit catches them early so they don't become new habits. You see the pattern. You acknowledge it. You recommit to the ghost principles. You adjust your behavior. This is how you sustain the approach long term. Not through perfect adherence, but through constant course correction. Let me tell you what the most common relapses look like so you can spot them in yourself. Relapse pattern 1. The progress broadcaster. You're deep in a project, making good progress, and suddenly you feel the urge to tell someone about it. You open Slack and start typing an update. You pull out your phone and draft a social post. You bring it up in a conversation when nobody asked. Catch yourself here. Ask, why do I want to share this right now? Is it because sharing will improve the outcome, or because I want the validation that comes with people knowing I'm working? If it's the latter, close the app. Return to the work. The urge will pass. Relapse pattern 2. The meeting creep. You've been protecting your calendar well, but then someone important asks for a meeting, your manager, a client, someone you don't want to disappoint, and you say yes even though you know this meeting isn't necessary. Then another meeting request comes. You say yes again. Before you know it, your calendar looks like Swiss cheese. No deep work blocks remain. You've slipped back into reactive mode. Catch this early. When you feel yourself. The monthly review is where you compare your output to your pre-ghost baseline. What were you producing before you adopted these principles? What are you producing now? Is the quality higher? Is the volume greater? Are you finishing more projects? Are you building deeper expertise? Are you creating more valuable outcomes? The evidence should be clear. If you're truly working like a ghost, your results should be noticeably better than they were when you were working in performance mode. If they're not, something's wrong with your implementation. Maybe you're not protecting your depth vault consistently enough. Maybe you're still too available. Maybe you're not being ruthless enough about eliminating shallow work. The monthly review helps you diagnose and fix these issues. Here's how to structure your monthly review. Block 90 minutes at the end of each month. Bring your weekly audit data from all 4 weeks. Calculate your monthly averages for deep work percentage and output to performance ratio. Then list every concrete result you produced that month. Not tasks completed. Results produced. Things that shipped. Problems solved. Value created. Compare this list to a typical month from before you started working like a ghost. The difference should be stark. You should have more finished projects, higher quality outcomes, and deeper expertise development. But numbers only tell part of the story. The qualitative experience matters too. Ask yourself these questions during your monthly review. Do I feel more in control of my time? Am I less anxious about my work? Do I feel like I'm making meaningful progress on things that matter? Am I more confident in my abilities? Do I feel less dependent on external validation? Am I sleeping better because I'm not constantly checking for notifications? These subjective improvements are just as important as the objective metrics. They indicate that you're not just producing more, you're also preserving your well-being. That's sustainable. That's how you work like a ghost for years, not just months. Accountability without announcement is important here. You're not publicly declaring your ghost commitments. You're not posting about your deep work schedule. You're privately tracking your adherence to these principles. You're holding yourself accountable to yourself, not to an audience. This is actually more effective because you can't fake it. You can't perform accountability. Either you did the deep work or you didn't. Either you finished the project or you didn't. Either you maintained your boundaries or you didn't. The evidence is in your private tracking system and in your output. No one else needs to know about your goals or your struggles. You just need to know, and you need to be honest with yourself about whether you're living up to your own standards. Some people find it helpful to have a single accountability partner. Not a group, not a public audience. One person who also works like a ghost and who you check in with monthly. You share your audit numbers. You share what you shipped. You share where you struggled. They do the same. This is mutual accountability without public performance. You're both invested in each other's success, and you're both committed to the same principles. If you find someone like this, protect that relationship. It's rare and valuable. Building an environment that enforces your ghost identity is about removing friction from ghost mode work and adding friction to performance mode work. This means designing your physical and digital spaces to support focus. It means setting up systems that make deep work the default and shallow work harder to do. Maybe that's using app blockers during your depth vault hours. Maybe that's having a dedicated space for deep work that you only use for that purpose. Maybe that's scheduling your depth vault blocks first and letting everything else fit around them instead of the other way around. Maybe that's having autoresponders on email and messages during focus time. The specifics matter less than the principle. Make ghost work easy and performance work hard. Let me give you specific environmental design tactics. For your physical space, create a focus setup that's different from your casual setup. If you work from home, don't do deep work in the same place you watch TV or scroll your phone. Your brain associates spaces with activities. Create a space association for focus. It doesn't have to be a separate room. It can be a specific chair at your table, with your phone in another room and your laptop in do not disturb mode. But make it distinct. When you sit there, your brain knows, we're going deep now. For your digital environment, use separate browser profiles or user accounts for deep work versus shallow work. Your deep work profile has no social media bookmarks, no Slack, no email, just the tools you need for execution. Your shallow work profile has all the communication apps for when you're in coordination mode. This creates friction for context switching. You can't absent-mindedly open Twitter while you're supposed to be writing because Twitter literally isn't available in your deep work profile. You'd have to switch profiles, which is just enough friction to make you pause and ask, do I really need to break focus right now? Usually the answer is no. For your calendar, use color coding to make deep work blocks visually dominant. Make them a bright color that stands out. Make meetings gray or white. When you look at your calendar, you should immediately see how much deep work you've protected versus how much time is fragmented by meetings. If your calendar is mostly gray, you know you have a problem. If it's mostly bright, you're protecting what matters. This visual feedback helps you make better scheduling decisions in the moment. For your communication apps, use status messages that reinforce your boundaries. In deep work until 3 p.m. will respond after is clear and unapologetic. You're not saying you might respond. You're saying you will respond at a specific time. This manages expectations and removes the guilt you might feel about not being immediately available. People know when they'll hear from you, and they adjust accordingly. Most people respect this more than constant partial availability, where you're technically reachable but never fully present. What old habits are creeping back? This is the question you need to ask yourself regularly, because you'll drift. Everyone drifts. The gravitational pull toward noise is strong. So you have to be vigilant. You have to catch yourself when you start slipping, when you find yourself checking Slack too often, when you start accepting more meetings than you should, when you feel the urge to announce a project before it's finished, when you start measuring your worth by your visibility instead of your output. These are warning signs. They indicate that you're drifting away from ghost principles. When you notice them, you need to course correct immediately. You need to recommit. You need to go back to basics. Protect the depth vault. Eliminate the noise. Focus on results. It's simple, even if it's not easy. Handling the pressure to perform is ongoing work, because that pressure never fully goes away. Managers want visibility. Colleagues want responsiveness. Clients want access. The organizational culture rewards presence. Everyone around you is operating in performance mode, and they expect you to as well. When you don't, they notice. They comment. They push back. You have to develop the skills to navigate this pressure without abandoning your principles. This means having explicit conversations about how you work and why. It means educating stakeholders on the value of your approach. It means proposing alternative ways to provide the visibility they need without sacrificing your execution time. Let me walk you through actual conversations you'll need to have. Scenario 1. Your manager says they need more frequent updates on your progress. They're used to daily stand-ups or constant status messages, and your silence makes them nervous. Here's the wrong response. Okay, I'll send more updates, and then you comply. Now you're back in performance mode. Here's the right response. I understand the need for visibility. Here's what I'm proposing. Instead of daily updates, I'll send a comprehensive weekly summary every Friday showing exactly what's shipped, what's in progress, and what's blocked. The weekly format lets me focus on execution during the week, and you get better information because I'm reporting outcomes instead of activities. Can we try this for a month and evaluate? Notice what you did there. You acknowledge their concern. You proposed a specific alternative that gives them what they actually need, which is confidence that work is getting done. You set a trial period so they don't feel like this is permanent if it doesn't work. And you framed it around outcomes for them, not just benefits for you. Most managers will say yes to this because they don't actually want to micromanage. They just want to not be surprised. Your weekly summary accomplishes that without derailing your daily execution. Scenario 2. A colleague says you're not being a team player because you're not as available as everyone else. You're not in the Slack channels constantly. You're not attending every optional meeting. They're making it a values issue, suggesting that your boundaries are antisocial. Here's the wrong response. Defending yourself emotionally or complying to avoid conflict. Here's the right response. I'm committed to the team's success, and I've found I contribute more effectively when I protect focused time for execution. I'm available for critical issues, and I make my scheduled collaboration time count by being fully present. I've noticed my output has increased significantly with this approach. Is there a specific way my current availability is blocking the team's progress? Notice the reframe. You're not debating whether you're a team player. You're asking for specific problems your approach is causing. Most of the time, there aren't any. The colleague is just uncomfortable with someone working differently. By asking for specifics, you either surface a real issue you need to address, or you reveal that this is just personal preference masquerading as principle. If there's a real issue, solve it. If there isn't, hold your boundary. Scenario 3. A client expects you to be reachable at all times. They send messages at random hours and expect quick responses. Your previous work pattern trained them to expect this, and now you're trying to reset expectations. Here's the wrong response, slowly responding less, hoping they'll figure it out. This just creates confusion and resentment. Here's the right response. A direct conversation early in the relationship or as soon as you're implementing boundaries. I want to make sure I'm delivering the best possible work for you. I've found that means protecting blocks of focused time for execution. Here's how I'm structuring my availability. I'll respond to messages within 24 hours during business days. For urgent issues, here's my phone number for true emergencies. In exchange for this structure, you're getting higher quality work because I'm not context switching constantly. Does this work for you? Again, you're framing this around value for them. You're not saying, I need boundaries for my mental health, even though that might be true. You're saying this structure produces better outcomes for you. Most clients care about outcomes, not access. If you deliver consistently, they'll adapt to your communication style. If you overpromise on availability and underdeliver on quality, they'll be dissatisfied regardless of how reachable you are. The minimum viable presence strategy is key here. You figure out what's the absolute minimum visibility you can provide that satisfies people's need to know what's happening without derailing your deep work. Maybe that's a brief written update once a week instead of daily stand-up meetings. Maybe that's office hours where you're available for questions instead of being constantly available. Maybe that's outcome reports at milestones instead of process updates throughout. You negotiate these alternative arrangements up front. You get buy-in. You set clear expectations, and then you hold to them. When people try to pull you into more visibility than you've agreed to, you politely remind them of the agreement and redirect. Over time, people adapt. They learn that you deliver results, so your lower visibility is acceptable. They learn that you're not being difficult, you're being strategic. They learn to trust your process even if it's different from everyone else's. Let me give you specific scripts for common pressure situations. When someone tries to add you to a recurring meeting you don't need to be in, thanks for thinking of me. I'm working to keep my meeting load minimal so I can focus on execution. Could you send me the notes from discussions where my input is needed, and I'll respond asynchronously? If there's a specific session where my presence is critical, let me know and I'll prioritize it. When someone wants to pick your brain without a clear agenda, I'm happy to help. Can you send me specific questions in advance so I can give you better answers? If it's more than a few questions, maybe we schedule 30 minutes next week. This filters out casual requests while showing willingness to help with legitimate needs. When someone messages you during your deep work block expecting an immediate response, don't respond immediately even if you see it. Wait until your predetermined response time. This trains people on your actual availability. If they mark it urgent and it's not actually urgent, respond with, got your message. For future reference, I check messages at 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. daily. For true emergencies, call my phone. How can I help with this? When your organizational culture does a visibility rewarding activity like daily stand-ups, and you want to opt out, I'd like to propose an experiment. For the next month, I'll provide my stand-up updates in writing by 9 a.m. instead of attending the synchronous meeting. This frees up 30 minutes daily for execution while still keeping the team informed. Can we try it and see if it causes any issues? Often managers will say yes because it's positioned as a trial, not a permanent rejection of team culture. When someone compliments you on always being available and you realize you've trained them to expect something you can't sustain, I appreciate that, and I want to be honest that I'm adjusting my availability going forward. I've realized that being constantly reachable means I'm not doing my best work. Here's my new response rhythm going forward. Then lay out your boundaries. This is harder than setting boundaries from the start, but it's necessary if you've already established a pattern you need to change. Building advocates who defend your approach accelerates this process. These are usually people who've directly benefited from your results. Your manager who got promoted partially because of the project you shipped. Your colleague who you made look good by solving a hard problem. Your client who you delivered exceptional value to. These people become your defenders. When others question why you're not more visible or available, these advocates speak up. They say things like, they always deliver, or they need focus time to do their best work, or just wait for the result, it'll be worth it. You don't ask them to do this. You earn it by consistently producing for them. And once you have advocates, your ghost approach becomes sustainable because you have organizational cover. How do you build advocates? By making other people successful through your work. When you deliver a project that makes your manager look good to their boss, you've created an advocate. When you solve a problem that was blocking a colleague, you've created an advocate. When you ship features that directly increase a client's revenue, you've created an advocate. These people have experienced the value of your results-focused approach firsthand. They've seen that your lower visibility doesn't mean lower productivity. In fact, they've seen the opposite. So when someone questions your work style, these advocates have credible evidence to point to. They've been on the receiving end of your output. They know it works. The key is making your results visible to the right people, even while your process stays invisible. Your manager needs to know what you shipped and what impact it had. Your colleagues need to see how your work solved their problems. Your clients need to understand the value you created for them. You're not hiding your outcomes. You're just not performing the process. This distinction matters. Results transparency plus process opacity equals optimal positioning. People see the value you create, but they don't see all the effort that went into creating it. This maintains the mystique while building credibility. Finding your ghost network is about identifying other high performers who operate similarly. They exist in every industry and every company. They're just not always visible because, well, they're ghosts. But when you encounter one, you recognize them immediately. They're the ones who aren't in every conversation. They're not constantly networking. They're not posting daily. But when they speak up, it's substantive. When they ship, it's quality. When they commit, they follow through. These are your people. These are the ones worth building relationships with. Because a relationship with another ghost is low maintenance and high value. You don't need constant contact. You don't need performative friendship. You just need mutual respect and the willingness to help each other when it actually matters. How do you identify ghosts in your field? Look for people who have impressive bodies of work but minimal social media presence. Look for people who are respected by serious practitioners but unknown to casual observers. Look for people who ship consistently but rarely announce their launches. Look for people who contribute substantive thoughts occasionally rather than hot takes constantly. Look for people whose LinkedIn shows projects and outcomes rather than thought leadership posts. These signals indicate someone who's focused on results rather than visibility. Here's an example from my own network. I met a software architect named James at a conference 5 years ago. We had one conversation about database optimization. It was technical, specific, and valuable. We exchanged contact information. Over the next 5 years, we've communicated maybe 15 times total. No small talk. No just checking in messages. Every interaction has been purposeful. He reached out when he hit a scaling problem I'd solved before. I reached out when I needed advice on a hiring decision. He introduced me to a client who needed exactly what I offer. I introduced him to an engineer he ended up hiring who became his best team member. Total communication time over 5 years. Probably 3 hours. Total value created, immeasurable. That's a ghost relationship. Compare that to the dozens of networking connections I made at that same conference. People I added on LinkedIn. People who I exchanged pleasantries with. People who I promised to stay in touch with. How many of those relationships created real value? Maybe 2. The rest were just names in a database. The difference is that James and I both understood that the relationship was about capability and value exchange, not about maintaining social bonds for their own sake. We trust that when either of us reaches out, it's because we have something worth saying. That trust is built on mutual respect for each other's time and each other's results. Here's how to initiate a ghost alliance relationship. First, do your research. Understand what they've built, what they're working on, what problems they're solving. You can't form a real alliance with someone you don't understand. Second, offer value before asking for anything. Maybe you send them a resource that's relevant to their work. Maybe you make an introduction to someone who can help them. Maybe you share an insight that applies to their situation. You're demonstrating that you understand what matters to them and that you're capable of providing value. Third, be direct about wanting to build a long-term, low-touch, high-value relationship. Say something like, I respect your work and how you approach execution. I'd value staying connected on a low-frequency, high-signal basis. When either of us has something worth sharing or needs specific help, we reach out. No obligation to stay in constant contact. Does that work for you? Most ghosts will immediately understand and appreciate this framing because it's how they naturally prefer to operate. Once you've established a few ghost alliance relationships, you need protocols for maintaining them without them becoming burdensome. Here's what works. No communication is expected unless there's something specific to communicate. You don't send just checking in messages. You don't feel obligated to react to their occasional posts. You don't wish them happy birthday. The relationship isn't about social maintenance. It's about mutual capability and respect. When you do communicate, it's purposeful and you get straight to the point. You respect their time by being concise. You respect their intelligence by being substantive. You respect their autonomy by not expecting immediate responses. A simple protocol. When you reach out, include in your message what specifically you need or what specifically you're offering, why you're bringing it to them rather than someone else, and what action you're requesting, if any. This makes it easy for them to evaluate whether to engage. They don't have to guess what you want. They don't have to extract the real question from layers of social niceties. You've made it efficient for them to help you or decline to help you. Both outcomes are fine. The relationship isn't damaged if they can't engage right now. You'll reach out again in the future when you have something relevant. They'll do the same. Coordinating on strategic opportunities is how ghost networks create leverage. Because when multiple high performers collaborate, you get exponential results. But the collaboration has to be structured correctly. It has to be project-based, time-bound, and outcome-focused. It can't devolve into endless coordination, so ghosts collaborate asynchronously when possible. They over-communicate on goals and under-communicate on process. They trust each other to execute their pieces independently. They sync only at decision points. This is how you get the benefits of collaboration without the overhead that usually makes collaboration slow and painful. And because you're working with other ghosts, you know everyone will follow through. You're not carrying dead weight. You're not managing people who need hand-holding. You're just executing in parallel and combining efforts at the end. Let me walk through what a ghost collaboration looks like in practice. Two consultants, both ghosts in their respective specialties, identify an opportunity that requires both their skill sets. A client needs both technical infrastructure work and process optimization. Neither consultant can deliver the full solution alone, but together they can. Here's how they structure it. They have one initial meeting to align on the outcome. What does success look like for the client? What are the deliverables? What's the timeline? They agree on these fundamentals up front. Then they divide responsibilities based on expertise. One takes the technical infrastructure, one takes the process optimization. They set 3 sync points over the 12-week project, at week 4, week 8, and week 11. Between sync points, they work completely independently. No status updates, no process sharing, just execution. They trust that each other is handling their piece. At sync point 1, they review progress and identify any dependencies or conflicts. They resolve them, adjust if needed, and return to independent execution. Same at sync point 2. At sync point 3, they're integrating their work and preparing the final delivery. They present to the client as a unified solution. The client has no idea how minimally these two consultants communicated. They just see a seamless, high-quality outcome delivered on time. That's ghost collaboration. Minimal coordination overhead, maximum result quality. This approach only works when both parties are actually capable of independent execution. If one person needs constant direction or reassurance, the structure breaks down. That's why ghost networks are selective. You only collaborate with people who've proven they can execute autonomously. You only work with people whose word means something. If they commit to delivering their piece by week 4, it's delivered by week 4. If they say they'll handle a particular aspect, they handle it without reminder. This reliability is what makes low-touch collaboration possible. Who in your network respects results over relationship theater? Make a list right now. Not people you're friendly with. Not people you enjoy talking to. People who consistently deliver. People who finish what they start. People who don't waste time on social performance. People who value substance over style. These are candidates for your ghost network. You probably have fewer of these people than you think. That's okay. Quality over quantity. 5 solid ghost relationships are worth more than 500 LinkedIn connections. Once you have your list, think about what each person brings to the table. What's their unique capability? What problems have they solved that you haven't? What expertise do they have that complements yours? This isn't about using people. It's about understanding where there's potential for mutual value creation. When you reach out to strengthen or establish these relationships, you're doing so from a place of genuine respect for what they do, not from a place of transactional networking. Now think about what you bring to the table for them. Why would they want to be in a ghost alliance with you? What value can you provide? What problems can you solve for them? What introductions can you make? What insights can you share? If you can't answer this clearly, you're not ready to form ghost alliances yet. You need to build your own capabilities and results first. Ghost networks are peer networks. Everyone is bringing something valuable. If you're not at that level yet, that's fine. Focus on building your own body of work. The network will form naturally once you've established yourself as someone who executes. Here's a micro challenge for building your ghost network. Over the next 30 days, identify 3 people who work like ghosts and initiate contact with each of them. Not to ask for anything, to offer something. Maybe it's a resource. Maybe it's an introduction. Maybe it's a thoughtful response to something they created. You're demonstrating that you understand the value of low-frequency, high-signal relationships. You're showing that you can provide value without asking for anything in return. Some won't respond. That's fine. Some will. Those are the beginnings of your ghost network. Nurture those relationships by continuing to be valuable on an occasional basis. Over time, these connections will create opportunities you can't predict now, but will be grateful for later. The transformation is now complete. You understand the principles. You have the practices. You know how to disappear, execute, and emerge. You know why silence is strategic. You know that noise and results are inversely correlated. You know that visibility creates the illusion of productivity while quietly destroying your capacity for real work. You know how to build a depth vault, protect your focus, and ship finished work that speaks louder than any self-promotion. You know how to be selectively visible, maintaining presence where it matters while disappearing where it doesn't. You've learned to let results build your reputation and advocates build your brand. You've discovered that the path to becoming exceptionally productive is counterintuitive. It requires becoming less visible, not more. Let me paint you a picture of what this transformation looks like in concrete terms. Picture yourself 6 months ago. You started your day by checking Slack and email before you even got out of bed. You saw messages that needed responses and your stress level immediately elevated. You got to your desk and spent the first hour of your workday catching up on what you missed overnight. You attended a morning stand-up where you gave a status update that nobody really needed to hear. You tried to do some actual work but got interrupted by messages every 10 minutes. You attended 2 meetings that should have been emails. You had lunch while browsing social media and feeling behind. You spent the afternoon context switching between 4 different tasks, making minimal progress on any of them. You posted an update about what you were working on, hoping someone would validate that you were on the right track. You ended the day feeling exhausted but not accomplished. You couldn't point to anything significant you'd actually finished. Just a lot of activity, a lot of communication, a lot of performance. Not much production. Now picture yourself 6 months from now, after you've implemented everything in this book. You wake up and you don't check your devices. You have a morning routine that centers you. You get to your depth vault at your predetermined time. Your phone? You end your day having moved 3 significant projects forward. You know exactly what you accomplished because you track outcomes, not activities. You feel satisfied but not drained. You're not anxious about what people think because you're confident in what you're building. You shut down your work completely in the evening. No checking email. No thinking about tomorrow. You're present with your life outside of work because you were fully present with your work during work hours. That's the difference. That's what working like a ghost looks like day to day. Less noise, more results, less stress, more satisfaction, less performance, more production. What have you eliminated? Performance anxiety is gone. You're no longer worried about whether people see you working because you're confident that your results will speak for themselves. You know that the evidence of your productivity is in your shipped projects, not in your visible activity. When someone questions why you weren't in a meeting or why you didn't respond immediately to a message, you don't get defensive. You just point to your results. You let your output do the defending. This is a profound psychological shift. You're no longer deriving your sense of professional worth from external validation. You're deriving it from internal standards. Am I executing at the level I know I'm capable of? Am I finishing what I start? Am I building things that create value? Those are the questions that matter now. Approval seeking is gone. You're no longer posting your process for likes. You're no longer sharing your plans for encouragement. You're no longer announcing your goals for accountability. You've internalized that approval from an audience doesn't help you execute. In fact, it hinders you. It creates an incentive to optimize for performance rather than production. So you've cut off that feedback loop. You work in silence. You validate your own progress based on objective metrics. You trust that the results will generate whatever approval or recognition you actually deserve, and if they don't, that's data about whether you're building the right things. But you're not changing your approach to get more approval. You're refining your approach to get better results. Shallow work has been minimized. You've ruthlessly eliminated the tasks and obligations that don't directly contribute to outcomes. You've said no to dozens of requests. You've declined hundreds of meetings. You've unsubscribed from countless notifications. You've removed yourself from distribution lists and Slack channels that were just noise. You've stopped attending events that were low ROI. You've stopped doing work that was just for show. Every one of those eliminations reclaimed time. Time you've redirected toward deep work. You've reclaimed dozens of hours per week. Your calendar looks different. Your communication patterns look different. Your work product looks different. You're producing more with less input. You're finishing what you start. You're building skills that compound. You're creating a body of work that proves your capabilities. What have you gained? Time. Not just hours on the calendar, but deep, uninterrupted time where meaningful work happens. Time where you can think complex thoughts. Time where you can solve difficult problems. Time where you can create things that require sustained cognitive effort. This time is the most valuable resource you have. You were spending it on shallow work and performance theater. Now you're spending it on execution. The compounding effect of this reallocation is staggering. Every week, you're making more progress than you used to make in a month. Every month, you're shipping more than you used to ship in a quarter. The velocity increase is real and measurable. Focus, the ability to go deep on complex problems without constant context switching. You've trained your attention span back to what it used to be before smartphones and social media destroyed it. You can sit with a problem for hours. You can hold complex models in your head. You can make connections between disparate ideas because you have the mental space to let those connections form. This focus is a competitive advantage that most people have forfeited. They've adapted to fragmentation. They've accepted that deep work is rare and difficult. You've proven that it's not rare, it's just defended. And you've built the defenses. Confidence. The unshakable confidence that comes from consistently delivering on your commitments. You say you're going to finish a project and you finish it. You set a goal for yourself and you achieve it. You identify a skill you need to develop and you develop it. This track record builds a form of self-trust that most people never experience. They're always starting things and not finishing them. Always announcing plans and not executing them. Always hoping they'll follow through and then disappointing themselves. You've broken that pattern. You've become someone who keeps your word to yourself. That's powerful. That confidence affects every area of your life, not just your work. Credibility. A reputation anchored in proven results rather than stated intentions. You're known for what you've done, not what you've said you'll do. When you tell someone you'll deliver something, they believe you because you have a track record. When you offer to take on a challenge, people trust you with it because you've proven you can execute. When opportunities arise, you're considered because decision makers know you're not going to waste their time with talk. You're going to produce results. This credibility opens doors that self-promotion never could. Because people aren't taking a chance on your potential. They're betting on your proven capability. You're the person people come to when they need something actually accomplished, not just discussed. In meetings, when there's a hard problem to solve, people look at you. Not because you're the loudest voice in the room, because you're the person who consistently delivers. When projects are falling behind and leadership needs someone to save them, you get the call. When clients have their most important problems, they bring them to you. This positioning is incredibly valuable. You're not competing on price. You're not competing on availability. You're competing on results. And results-based competition is where ghosts dominate. You're building career capital that opens doors you didn't even know existed. Because when you consistently deliver excellence, people remember. They tell others. Your reputation spreads through networks you're not even part of. Someone you worked with 5 years ago is now in a position to make hiring decisions, and they remember how you executed. They reach out. You get opportunities you didn't apply for. You get offers you didn't seek. This is what happens when you build a reputation on results rather than relationships. The relationships follow the results, not the other way around. And you're doing it without the exhaustion and anxiety that comes from constant performance. You're working hard, but you're working smart. You're not staying up late because you spent your day in meetings, and now you have to do your actual work at night. You're not working weekends because you're behind. You're not constantly stressed about whether you're visible enough. You've designed a system where your work hours are protected and productive, where your boundaries are clear and respected, where your results speak louder than your presence. This is sustainable. This is how you work like a ghost for decades, building a body of work that compounds over time instead of burning out after a few years of unsustainable hustle. The ghost identity is who you are now. You're someone who understands that real power is quiet, that real achievement doesn't need announcement, that real expertise doesn't require constant demonstration. You're comfortable with long periods of invisibility because you know what you're building during those periods. You're comfortable with uncertainty during execution because you trust your process. You're comfortable with delayed gratification because you know the results will be worth the wait. You don't need the validation of progress updates because you're too busy making actual progress. You don't need an audience for your work because the work itself is the reward, and the outcomes will attract the right audience when it's ready. This identity shift is permanent. You can't go back to performing productivity after you've experienced actual productivity. You can't go back to constant availability after you've experienced the power of protected focus. You can't go back to announcing intentions after you've experienced the impact of revealing results. You've seen behind the curtain. You understand how work actually gets done, and you can never unsee it. Your competitive edge is stark. While others are broadcasting intentions, you're shipping reality. While others are building audiences, you're building artifacts. While others are explaining what they're going to do, you're finishing what you've been quietly working on. While others are performing productivity, you're being productive. This gap compounds over time. Every month you're pulling further ahead. Not because you're more talented, not because you work more hours, because you work smarter, because you've eliminated the performance tax, because you've optimized for outcomes instead of optics, because you've mastered the discipline of silence. Let me show you exactly what this competitive edge looks like across different timescales. In the short term, over a week or a month, the edge might not be obvious to outside observers. Someone working in performance mode might look busier than you. They're in more meetings. They're posting more updates. They're more visible. But you're making more actual progress. You're completing more projects. You're building more skills. The scoreboard is different. They're measuring activity. You're measuring outcomes. And outcomes are what matter. In the medium term, over a quarter or a year, the edge becomes visible to anyone paying attention. The performer has a lot of in-progress projects and a lot of conversations about plans. You have a portfolio of shipped projects with measurable impact. The performer has been talking about learning a new skill. You're already proficient at it. The performer has announced 3 major initiatives. You've completed 2 and are silently working on a 3rd. The gap is widening. Your results are compounding while their announcements are just noise that's forgotten by the next scroll. In the long term, over 3 to 5 years, the edge becomes a chasm. The performer is still in the same position, still talking about their plans, still performing productivity for an audience that stopped paying attention. You've built something significant. Maybe you've become a recognized expert in your field, not through thought leadership, but through delivered results. Maybe you've been promoted multiple times because you consistently execute. Maybe you've started a successful business built on products you shipped while others were building their personal brands. Maybe you've developed a skill set that makes you nearly irreplaceable. The compounding effect of focus over years is exponential. You're not just ahead. You're playing a different game entirely. Here's a concrete case study that illustrates this divergence. 2 writers start at the same time, both with ambitions to build careers in their field. Writer A takes the conventional approach. She builds a social media presence. She shares writing tips. She posts snippets of her work in progress. She engages with other writers. She builds an audience of 20,000 followers over 3 years. She's visible. She's known in her niche. But when you look at her actual published work, it's thin. A few blog posts, 1 self-published short book that didn't sell well, a lot of started projects that never finished. She spent so much time building an audience and maintaining that audience that she didn't have time to actually write at the level required to publish traditionally, or to build a sustainable business. She's an influencer in the writing space, but not a working writer. Writer B takes the ghost approach. She writes in silence. She doesn't build a social media presence. She doesn't share her process. She just writes. First project takes her 9 months. It's a novel. She revises it. She gets feedback from a few trusted readers. She revises again. Then she queries agents. Gets rejected 20 times. Keeps querying. Gets an agent. The book sells to a publisher. It comes out 2 years after she started. It does okay, not spectacular, but okay. She's already written the 2nd book during the publication process. It sells faster because she has an agent and a track record. 3rd book does better. 5 years in, she has 3 published novels, a growing readership, and a sustainable career as a working writer. No social media presence to speak of. Just books that people read and recommend to each other. The work speaks. At the 5-year mark, who has the better career? Writer A has more followers. Writer B has more published work and more income from her writing. Writer A is performing the role of writer for an audience. Writer B is actually writing. Writer A's followers will disappear if she stops posting. Writer B's readers will wait for her next book. Writer A built a platform on noise. Writer B built a career on results. One approach is fragile. One is anti-fragile. One requires constant feeding. One compounds over time. This pattern repeats in every field. The ghost approach wins in the long run, not always in the short run. Sometimes the performer gets attention first. Sometimes they get opportunities first. But over time, the people who focus on results build something sustainable. The people who focus on visibility build something that requires constant maintenance and eventually collapses or gets ignored. You're choosing the path that's harder at the beginning and easier over time. Most people choose the path that's easier at the beginning and harder over time. That's why most people don't win in the long run. Close your eyes for a moment and envision yourself 1 year from now. Picture what you will have accomplished in that year, not what you'll have talked about, not what you'll have planned, what you'll have actually finished. 3 major projects, complete and launched. A skill developed to professional level. A body of work that demonstrates clear expertise. A reputation that opens doors without you having to knock. Relationships with people who respect what you do, not just who you are. Opportunities that find you because people seek out proven executors. Financial rewards that reflect the value you create. Professional positioning that gives you leverage and choice. This is what's possible when you work like a ghost. This is what happens when you stop performing and start producing. This is available to you right now, today, if you commit to the principles and practices you've learned. But let's get more specific. Let's make this vision concrete. What will be your 3 major results completed in silence over the next 12 months? Define them now. Make them specific and measurable. Not vague aspirations, but concrete deliverables. Project 1 might be something like, launch a software tool that processes 10,000 transactions per month with documented ROI for clients. Or, publish a research paper in a peer-reviewed journal with original data analysis. Or, deliver a consulting engagement that increases client revenue by 30% with documented methodology. The key is specificity and measurability. You'll know when it's done. Other people will know when it's done. There's no ambiguity. Project 2 might be in a different domain. Develop proficiency in a new technical skill demonstrated by completing 3 paid projects using that skill. Or build a portfolio piece that showcases a capability you haven't demonstrated before. Or establish expertise in a niche by producing 5 substantial pieces of analysis that become reference materials in that space. Again, concrete and measurable. You're not just learning or exploring. You're producing evidence of capability. Project 3 might be relationship or positioning focused. Get introduced to and have substantial conversations with 10 key decision makers in your target market. Or speak at 3 industry events where your ideal clients gather. Or get published in 3 publications that your target audience reads. Even the relationship goals are outcome-focused. Not network more, but specific relationships with specific people that create specific opportunities. Write these 3 goals down privately. Don't announce them. Don't share them for accountability. Just write them down and start executing. Break each goal into the critical path of tasks that will actually move you toward completion. Eliminate everything else. For the next 12 months, these 3 goals are your North Star. They guide your decisions about where to spend your time. They help you say no to distractions. They keep you focused on what matters. Every week in your ghost audit, you're evaluating, did I make progress on my 3 major goals this week? If yes, good week. If no, why not? And what needs to change next week? Don't do more than 3 major goals. This is important. Most people overcommit. They have 10 goals and they accomplish none of them. You have 3 goals and you accomplish all 3. At the end of 12 months, you have 3 significant results to show. That's more than most people accomplish in 5 years. Because you focused. Because you protected your execution time. Because you finished what you started. 3 completed major projects beats 30 incomplete minor projects every single time. As you work on these goals in silence, you'll face temptations. The temptation to announce your progress. The temptation to seek validation. The temptation to get feedback before you're ready. The temptation to show people the 70% version. Remember why you're resisting these temptations. Every time you announce prematurely, you pay a cost. You invite input that might derail you. You create social pressure to proceed in a certain direction. You get validation that reduces your motivation to finish. You leak the power of the eventual reveal, so you sit with the discomfort. You trust the process. You keep working in silence. And when you emerge at the end of 12 months with 3 major accomplishments, the impact is undeniable. Imagine the credibility you'll command. When you consistently deliver quality work without fanfare, people notice. They respect it more than they respect self-promotion because delivery is rare and talk is cheap. You become the person who others aspire to work like. You become the standard. And that positioning is powerful. It gives you choices. It gives you leverage. It gives you the freedom to work on what matters to you because people trust that whatever you choose to work on, you'll do it well. This credibility can't be faked. It can't be purchased. It can only be earned through years of consistent execution. But you're starting that journey today. Every project you finish in silence adds to your credibility bank account. Every result you deliver compounds your. This rhythm prevents burnout while maintaining high output. Over the course of a year, you might have 4 major execution phases of 10 weeks each, with 3-week recovery phases between them. That's 40 weeks of focused execution and 12 weeks of recovery. You'll accomplish more in those 40 focused weeks than most people accomplish in 52 fragmented weeks. And you won't burn out because you're building in recovery. You're acknowledging that sustainable high performance requires periods of rest. Another key to sustainability is evolution of your practice. You're not rigidly adhering to the same system forever. You're adapting as your circumstances change, as your skills improve, as your goals shift, as your life evolves. The core principles stay the same. Minimize noise, maximize focus, finish what you start, reveal strategically. But the specific implementation details change. Maybe early in your career, you can protect 4-hour deep work blocks daily. Later, with more responsibilities, maybe it's 3 4-hour blocks per week. That's fine. You're still working like a ghost. You're just adapting the practice to your reality. The ghost approach also gets easier over time, not harder. This is different from many productivity systems that require constant willpower. At first, working like a ghost requires discipline. You have to fight your habits. You have to resist social pressure. You have to sit with discomfort. But over time, it becomes your default. Your brain adapts to long focus periods. Your network adapts to your communication style. Your reputation reinforces your boundaries. After a year of working like a ghost, it takes less effort to maintain the approach than it did at the beginning. After 3 years, it's just how you work. The discipline has become identity. The practices have become habits. The approach has become effortless. Write your commitment now. Complete this sentence. I work like a ghost because, maybe your answer is, I work like a ghost because I refuse to confuse motion with progress. Maybe it's, I work like a ghost because I value finishing over announcing. Maybe it's, I work like a ghost because I trust that my work will speak louder than my words ever could. Maybe it's, I work like a ghost because I've learned that visibility and velocity are inversely correlated. Maybe it's, I work like a ghost because I want to be known for what I deliver, not what I declare. Whatever your reason, own it. Let it guide your decisions. Let it remind you why you're choosing the harder path of silence and execution over the easier path of performance and announcement. Take a moment right now. Actually write your commitment, not mentally. Physically write it or type it somewhere you'll see regularly. This isn't a public declaration. This is a private contract with yourself. This is you acknowledging that you've chosen a different path. A path that requires discipline. A path that requires patience. A path that requires trusting that results matter more than recognition. A path that most people won't understand because they're still trapped in the performance economy. But you understand. You've learned what they haven't learned yet. You know what they don't know. And that knowledge is power if you apply it. Your commitment statement is your anchor. When you're tempted to announce a project prematurely, read it. When you're feeling anxious about your invisibility, read it. When you're facing pressure to be more available, read it. When you doubt whether this approach is working, read it. It reminds you of your why. It reconnects you to your core motivation. It steadies you when the performance culture around you is creating noise and turbulence. You have your North Star. You've chosen your path. Now you walk it. Let me give you a 90-day implementation roadmap that takes you from where you are now to full ghost mode. This is your transition plan. Days 1 through 30, you're in foundation phase. You're auditing your current state. You're identifying what needs to change. You're setting up your systems. You're having the difficult conversations about boundaries. You're scheduling your first deep work blocks. You're choosing your first stealth project. This month is about preparation and small wins. You're not trying to transform everything overnight. You're building the infrastructure for transformation. Days 31 through 60, you're in execution phase. You're protecting your depth vault. You're making progress on your stealth project. You're declining non-essential obligations. You're practicing strategic silence. You're experiencing the discomfort of invisibility and learning to sit with it. You're discovering that you can do more in focused blocks than you previously did in entire weeks. You're building evidence that this approach works. This month is about proving to yourself that the principles actually deliver results. You're gathering data. You're refining your systems. You're identifying your relapse patterns and building circuit breakers. Days 61 through 90, you're in emergence phase. You're completing your stealth project. You're polishing it. You're preparing your reveal. You're executing that reveal strategically. You're experiencing the impact of emerging with finished work after extended silence. You're seeing how people respond differently to complete results than they respond to progress updates. You're building advocates. You're establishing your reputation as someone who executes. This month is about solidifying your new identity. You're not just someone who tried this approach. You're someone who works like a ghost. That's who you are now. After 90 days, you evaluate. Has your deep work percentage increased? Has your output to performance ratio improved? Have you finished projects you wouldn't have finished in your old mode? Do you feel less anxious and more in control? Has your reputation shifted? Are people treating you differently? The answers should all be yes. If they're not, you need to diagnose what's not working. Are you actually protecting your depth vault, or are you letting interruptions creep in? Are you actually staying silent during execution, or are you slipping back into announcement mode? Are you actually finishing projects, or are you still stuck in the 70% trap? Be honest in your evaluation. The system works if you work the system. If you're not getting results, you're not fully implementing. Assuming your 90-day evaluation is positive, you then shift into maintenance mode. You're no longer trying to change your habits. You're just living your new habits. You keep doing your weekly audits. You keep protecting your depth vault. You keep finishing in silence and revealing strategically. You keep building your body of work. Over the next year, these practices deepen. They become effortless. They become identity, and the compounding effects become obvious. By the end of year one, you'll look back at your pre-ghost self and barely recognize that person. How did I ever work that way? How did I tolerate all that noise? How did I accept constant interruption as normal? You can't relate anymore because you've experienced something better. Year two is about scaling. Now that you've mastered ghost mode execution for yourself, you start thinking about how to scale it. If you manage others, you start implementing ghost principles at the team level. If you're an individual contributor, you start mentoring others on this approach. If you're an entrepreneur, you start designing your business systems around ghost principles. You're not just working like a ghost. You're building ghost systems. Systems that reward results over presence. Systems that protect focus over visibility. Systems that create space for deep work instead of demanding constant coordination. This scaling multiplies your impact. You're not just improving your own productivity. You're improving the productivity of everyone you influence. Year three is about leadership. By now, you have a significant body of work to show. You've delivered consistently for 3 years. People know you as someone who executes. Your reputation is established. Now you're in a position to influence culture at a larger scale. Maybe you're leading a department and you can implement results-only policies. Maybe you're consulting and you can teach clients these principles. Maybe you're speaking and you can share this approach with wider audiences. You're no longer just benefiting from working like a ghost. You're spreading the approach to others who are trapped in performance mode and don't know there's an alternative. You're creating change at the system level. This is the long game. This is what working like a ghost builds over years. Not just personal productivity improvements, not just career advancement, but the ability to influence how work gets done in your sphere of influence. The ability to create environments where people can do their best work. The ability to demonstrate through your example that there's a better way. That noise and results are inversely correlated. That silence is strategic. That finishing matters more than announcing. That focus beats busyness. That depth beats breadth. That outcomes beat activities. These principles are universal. They apply in any field, any industry, any role. And they're desperately needed in a culture that's drowning in noise and starving for signal. No announcement necessary, just results. This is your new operating principle. This is how you evaluate every action. Before you post that update, ask yourself, is this announcement necessary, or can I just deliver the result? Before you schedule that meeting, ask yourself, is this coordination necessary, or can I just make the decision and inform people of the outcome? Before you explain your process, ask yourself, is this explanation necessary, or can I just show them the finished work? But let's be clear about what this doesn't mean. This doesn't mean you're secretive or withholding. When people ask you direct questions, you answer them honestly. When stakeholders need information to make decisions, you provide it. When clients need updates on deliverables, you give them meaningful updates focused on outcomes. The principle is about eliminating unnecessary noise, not eliminating necessary communication. You're not being difficult. You're being efficient. You're not hiding. You're protecting your execution time. You're not antisocial. You're selectively social. There's a difference, and you understand that difference now. See you on the other side of silence. This is not goodbye. This is see you later. I'll see you when you emerge with your first major result completed in stealth mode. I'll see you when you've proven to yourself that you can finish something significant without seeking validation along the way. I'll see you when you've experienced the power of strategic opacity and selective presence. I'll see you when you've built your depth vault and protected your focus ruthlessly. I'll see you when you've made the shift from performer to producer. I'll see you when you understand in your bones that silence is strategy and noise is a tax you can no longer afford to pay. The wait might be 3 months. It might be 6 months. It might be a year. I don't know your timeline, but I know that if you implement what you've learned in this audiobook, you will emerge. You will surface with something undeniable, something that proves you can execute at a level that most people only talk about, something that establishes you as someone who delivers, not someone who discusses. And when you do emerge, you'll carry a quiet confidence that's unmistakable. You'll know what you're capable of. You'll know that you don't need an audience to do meaningful work. You'll know that focus and discipline create results that no amount of networking or self-promotion can fake. The journey from here is yours. I've given you the map. I've shown you the principles. I've walked you through the practices. I've explained the psychology. I've illustrated with examples. I've provided the systems and frameworks. But I can't do the work for you. Only you can decide to actually implement this. Only you can choose silence over noise. Only you can protect your depth vault when everyone around you is performing productivity. Only you can resist the urge to announce when you're excited about what you're building. Only you can sit with the discomfort of invisibility while you execute. Only you can finish projects when finishing gets hard. Only you can reveal strategically instead of desperately. Only you can build the reputation of someone who actually delivers. Most people who hear these ideas will nod along. They'll think that makes sense. They'll agree that noise and results are inversely correlated. They'll acknowledge that they spend too much time performing and not enough time producing. And then they'll change nothing. They'll go back to their default patterns. They'll keep checking Slack every 5 minutes. They'll keep attending meetings that don't matter. They'll keep announcing projects they won't finish. They'll keep performing productivity for an audience that doesn't care. And 5 years from now, they'll still be in the same place, wondering why they haven't made more progress, wondering why they're not more successful, wondering why people don't take them seriously. You're not going to be one of those people. You're reading this because you're ready to change. You're ready to work differently. You're ready to become someone who executes instead of someone who explains. You're ready to trade visibility for velocity. You're ready to trade validation for value creation. You're ready to work like a ghost. And now you have everything you need to do exactly that. You have the why because noise and results are inversely correlated. You have the what, disappear, execute, emerge. You have the how, protect your depth vault, eliminate shallow work, finish in silence, reveal strategically. You have the systems, weekly audits, circuit breakers, recovery protocols. You have the scripts, boundary setting language, deflection responses, reveal frameworks. Now go, disappear, execute, dominate. The world doesn't need more announcements. It needs more people who actually finish what they start. It needs more professionals who value substance over style. It needs more creators who build in private and reveal in public only when they have something undeniable. It needs more ghosts, and you're about to become one. The work is waiting. The depth vault is ready. The outcome is clear. Everything else is noise. You eliminate it. Focus on what matters. Ship the result. Let it speak. That's how ghosts work. That's how you work now. Welcome to the invisible elite. We don't make noise. We make impact. And starting today, so do you.